Hi, I'm Atomic Tom. Welcome to the lab. The focus for today's British Science Week 2025 session is animal adaptations. I wonder what you know already about this part of science. What have you learnt about it before? Let's start by thinking about our key vocabulary for today's session. Have a think about these words. Have you heard them before? Do you know what they mean? Habitat, adapt, characteristics, suited, insulate. So what is a habitat? Can you think of another name for it or a way to describe it? Scientists often understand a habitat as the natural home or environment of a living thing. So plants grow in all sorts of different habitats all over the world. And there are all sorts of different plants which suit those habitats. Today though, we're going to be concentrating on animal adaptations and thinking about how animals have adapted and changed to suit the habitat that they are in. A habitat is created by the temperature, rainfall, and other weather conditions, depending on where it is on Earth and on the land, or even in the sea. It's also affected by the physical features of its location. So if it's on land, for example, what's the soil like? How clean is the water? How available is water? How high is the altitude of that land? We're mostly going to be thinking about land habitats today. But there are all sorts of different habitats. So can you think of any? Can you think of any examples of habitats from all over the world? So maybe you came up with forests, deserts, polar regions, marine and freshwater habitats, mountains, grasslands, even tundra. Remember, we can also have microhabitats within those habitats. So part of a pond, or in a forest it could be under a fallen tree, a smaller part of that habitat. In the lab today, I've got pictures of all these different animals, and all we're going to do is group them in various ways. We can think of all sorts of ways to group them, and scientists like to group things together so that we can compare. We can understand the differences between those groups. We can think of why there might be similarities. So, here we go. Here is our selection of animals then, and as we can see, we've got all sorts of different types, from a polar bear and a walrus to camels and ostriches, toucans, frogs, tarantulas, desert foxes, all sorts of different types. If you're doing this with a friend, you can also kind of set each other challenges where you say, right, now organise those animals like this. So let's give a couple of those a go. First, we're going to go for animals with teeth. So we'll start over here because these all have teeth, so we can put those that way slightly. A penguin? No, penguins don't have teeth. Ostriches. This bird doesn't have a teeth because birds don't have teeth. A camel? Yes. A wolf? Of course. No. The fox? Yes, you definitely have teeth. Frogs have teeth. Don't know if you know that one, but frogs have teeth as well. The butterfly? No. So we've got types of birds, and then they don't have teeth either. Excellent. Or we could arrange them as different types of animals. We could say maybe animals with backbones and animals without backbones. Creatures, living things without backbones. So that would be these two just here. And after we've arranged all of these, that's quite a big group, isn't it? So we could put them into the different types of animals. Let's have birds. There we go. Keep our birds together still. And amphibians, we'll pop that one just there, slightly on its own. And then we have lots of mammals, don't we? Mammal, 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 camel the mammal. And that one's you're a mammal. And then we've got a couple of reptiles just here. We don't have any fish on there. So all of these different types. But we're going to be talking about adaptations to do with cold weather. So let's think about the ones that live in cold weather. And I think by looking at the pictures, we can kind of see that there are some clues with the backgrounds, the terrain and the environments that they're in. In our cold polar regions, we don't have lots of plants, so they probably wouldn't have green backgrounds. They certainly aren't sandy deserts. So let's put all of these over here. You're going that way and that way and that way. Your rainforest is over there. I think your jungle rainforest would be over here as well. And oh, you're a desert fox. We could have an Arctic fox, which looks slightly different. So there are different types of animals that live in different environments. And of course, camel, you're not from the polar regions, are you? By observing that, we can almost see, as we said, the colours. These are very pale colours in the background, the ice and the snow. And some of those animals have adapted to have those colours on them. We could also look at their coats, their ways of staying warm. Lots of blubber on this one, a little bit on this one, and also those feathers are there arranged to keep the penguin nice and warm. And these big coats on the different animals, the coats of fur that keep them warm in those cold, cold conditions. So we could think about our polar regions, or we could think of these adaptations that happen in lots of different ways. Instead of just focusing on the cold places, why do these look like this? Do we get lots of reptiles in cold places? If not, why not? Can we think of a reason? Do some groups of animals work better in different places to others? There are all sorts of questions we can think about by observing what happens when we group these animals together. Most animals who live in a polar habitat are adapted to suit those cold conditions. They may have thick fur in different layers, often with a waterproof layer on top as well. Some animals might have extra layers of fat called blubber, which give them insulation to protect them from the cold, keep that heat in their bodies. Some animals even have this special type of antifreeze chemical in their blood to keep their blood nice and runny, going all the way around their bodies and not freezing. Pretty awesome. Is that cool or what? Many polar animals have white fur or white feathers to help them camouflage against predators in the snow, or even so that they can camouflage and hide from their prey because they are the predator. The polar bear lives in the Arctic regions of Alaska, Canada, Russia, Greenland, and Norway, those northern lands in the top of the world. Let's look more closely at exactly how it's adapted to suit the conditions of its habitat. We can see it has large paws which help it walk on the powdery snow without sinking in. They're a bit like snow boots. The polar bear has long, sharp claws to grip the ice to run faster, as well as to help when it catches its prey. And like many other polar animals, the polar bear has white fur to camouflage it against the snow, against the ice, and against the horizon, as we mentioned a minute ago. But interestingly, it actually has black skin under its fur because that helps to absorb the heat from the sun and keep the bear's temperature nice and warm inside its body. So polar bears have thick fur to keep them warm with a waterproof layer on top for that extra protection. And they have a layer of fat which works as insulation to keep them warm. All sorts of different adaptations, which is why they're such amazing predators in that environment. They also have a really strong sense of smell, so they can detect their prey even from a really huge distance. They have small ears and a small tail, which have less chance of freezing as those extremities on the edge of its body. So over to you, scientist. We're going to pause the video soon and you can explore these different animal adaptations. You could maybe use this resource, these different pictures, or think of other animals if you want to. I've used the example of polar regions and how animals adapt to the cold. You could use any different version of that. You could think about desert adaptations or forest adaptations. Let's think about how we could group these different living things. What do they have in common? Think about how they have adapted to their environment. Do they have any common characteristics or traits? Those are good science words to use as well. Alternatively, instead of grouping animals together, you could look at one particular animal and think about how that has adapted to its habitat and its environment. There are different ways of doing this. These are just a few ideas. I hope you've enjoyed learning about animal adaptations today. Stay curious.